Hi all, thank you so much for joining this webinar today, Level Up Your SharePoint with Nintex. A little bit on Provoke. We are a Microsoft Solutions partner, and we've been around for about 14 years. We're also a Nintex Most Valued Partner based on our alignment with them, and have won a stack of their awards as well. The most recent being the Solution Innovation Award for a project that we completed right here with Microsoft in Seattle. Today, James, myself, will be your moderator, and Chris, our technical product specialist, will be your presenter.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So those of you who have attended the past webinars would have seen this setup before. We're using the lighthearted theme of Space Invaders to display the leveling up your SharePoint. And what exactly does that mean? It means that by using some of these awesome partner products, you can really boost the capabilities of SharePoint. And then just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. The webinar will run for 30 minutes. We'll be in broadcast-only mode and recorded for future viewing. You can also type in questions in the question pane. We'll do our best to get to all those at the end of the session. But if not, we'll be sure to address those personally. You do have two voice options. Your system will default to mic and speakers. But if you're having trouble with that, you may dial in with the phone number shown here. If you want to learn more and just get started, because it really is that easy, just contact myself at james.poretta@provokesolutions.com or visit our website at provokesolutions.com. And then over to Chris.
Beauty. Thanks, James. Hi, guys. Just do a recap of what we've covered over the last 4 weeks. So this is the fourth and final session that concentrates on Nintex of our Level Up campaign. But where did we start? We started 4 weeks ago with just introducing you to what Nintex was and its basic workflow capabilities. And then the following week after that, we moved into more, use cases that satisfy the IT savvy people within the organization. So the technical specialists, the infrastructure guys, and also some of the developers. Last week, I then introduced you to Forms. And what we did was we created forms that were available for people attached to the intranet using either a desktop browser or even their mobile phone. So if they've got their mobile phone that's got a connection to the intranet, we made a form that was available in that form factor. But today we're really going to concentrate on how do you connect in other ways? How do you connect when you're outside the office? So if we flick through to the next slide, James, I'll show you guys what we're about to talk about. I am going to just follow on from a couple of things that we didn't have time to discuss last week. Just a few advanced form topics. Well, not advanced, but things that make you seem advanced is probably a better way to put it. So some quick tips and tricks of how to make your forms really fly. And then we're going to introduce you to Nintex Mobile. So this is particularly for people who want to be connected outside the office. And when I say connected, sometimes they don't have to be. They can be in completely offline mode. So we'll show you how you can leverage Nintex Mobile to do that. What is Nintex Mobile? Nintex Mobile is an application, a native application that you can install on any of your popular mobile operating systems, whether that be the Windows Phone and tablet platforms, Android and iOS. Right, shall we get on with the show then? I'll just take control and show my screen. James, just checking that you guys can see my screen and you see the familiar leave request in front of you.
Yeah, Chris, everything's great.
Beautiful. Okay, so for those of you who have been on all our webinars, you'll recognize this because this is probably the fourth time that we've been here. For those of you who are new to this session, I'll just give you a very, very brief overview of what it is. This is an example of a gentleman called Eden Stafford applying for annual leave. And the way that he does that is he clicks on new item and fills out some details. So if I click on a new item, a SharePoint form loads up. This is 100% SharePoint. He fills in some information about the leave that he wants to go on, chooses the type of leave, picks the date, maybe types an optional description and hits save, and away he goes. When he does that, the leave request will appear here in this list, and after the workflow's kicked off, if he's successful, his leave will appear in the company calendar. But what you just saw very, very briefly was the SharePoint form. I'll keep that open because I'll open up the Nintex one on a new screen. So we're kind of limited here. The way that we create a form using Nintex Forms is we go to the list itself, and then there's a button here that says Nintex Forms. So last week we did exactly this. We generated a form using Nintex. What it did was it grabbed all the list columns and arranged them in what it thought was its best arrangement possible. And you can see it's done a pretty good job just straight away. And then I was dragging and dropping and manipulating items. I decided that I didn't want attachments last week, so I highlighted them all, hit the delete key on my keyboard, got rid of those. I moved the start and end date around just to give us a little bit more room and push this down. I'm not going to repeat all that because if you want to see that, then our webinars are on YouTube. Just do a search for, when you're in YouTube, for Provoke Solutions, and that'll be one of the first hits that you see, and you'll see the Level Up webinar series. After I created the form which was appropriate for a desktop, I then created a form that would be browsable using a smartphone. So it's the web browser on your smartphone, and all I needed to do was to click on this icon here, and it generates a smart form factor form. That's a lot of forms in one sentence, for a mobile phone or a smartphone. You can see here it's done a pretty good job of the layout. It also hasn't brought in attachments because it recognized that I deleted them in that last form, so it's using the desktop version as the master copy. Okay, once I was happy with that, then I can preview them. So let's preview the smartphone one. So what it's doing is it's rendering a version of the smartphone layout on the browser just so that I can test things and see what it looks like. The final thing that I did was I published this form outside the firewall. So I used Nintex Live to take basically a copy of the form definition and host it for us in Nintex's secure cloud offering, which is actually sitting in Microsoft Azure. And I also made it anonymous so that people could, say for example, if this was a survey, could access the form without having any access whatsoever to our SharePoint intranet. So we're not opening any holes in the firewall. We're not giving people explicit permissions to different parts of our site. All we're doing is we're saying that they can touch that Microsoft Azure part of the cloud. They can submit a form. That's it. So what I want to do now is just show you a couple of other things that can make our forms really fly. And one of those is a common request that we get from people that deal with person fields. And we have one, by coincidence, here on the behalf of field. And one of the things that you can't do with SharePoint is default it to a particular person's name. It's really difficult. With Nintex, it's easy, and I'll show you how to do that. So for those of you who haven't seen this before, what I'm going to do is double click on the field just to bring up the field properties that I can configure. And amongst other things like changing the font and the colors and everything else like that, I can change the default value. So this one here by default is just saying use the connected field's default value. So this is connected to the on behalf of column or field, and its default value you can't set in SharePoint. Well, you can't set as the person. What I want to do in this instance is set it as the requester. So what I do is I'm going to change this. I'm going to specify the default value, and now I could hard code something in here, but I don't want to do that because Nintex offers me much more powerful ways of interacting with the system. And these tabs here might look familiar to those of you who have attended these Level Up sessions. For those of you who haven't, you've got the full gamut of what's available to you from the list, and also different parts of metadata about what's going on in the SharePoint environment. And one of those things is the current user. So if I select that, double click on it, That's the dynamic text to insert. Go away tooltip, there you go, current user. Hit the OK button and save that. Now if I have a look at this form, because I am logged in as Eden, hopefully we'll see his name. There you go, on behalf of Eden Stafford. So that was a really, really easy way to default to a particular user. In this case I wanted to default to the current user, and that's going to save you a lot of time and hopefully a lot less coding. Why don't I publish that? And while that's been published, I'll hop back into the next, into the previous screen, just giving it a few seconds, because if I hit the refresh button too quickly, we'll see something. I think we go. So we're back in the leave request screen. That was the old SharePoint form. Now look what happens when I hit the new button. It brings up a much cooler looking form, and it's also defaulted the person's name to Eden. That's pro tip number 1. How about pro tip number 2? And this is probably the next most commonly requested feature. If I jump over to finance and show you an expense report, or this is like an expense claim, what we have here is another Nintex form. I won't bother filling in these other details, but the example is that you are filling in an expense claim and you're also filling in for multiple items. So say for example in this one here, I wanted to buy some, or I did buy some oranges, and I bought 13 of them at $2.50 each. I'm going to tab out of this field, and what that's doing is automatically totaling up the 13 multiplied by $2.50, and it's also putting down a grand total. So that's pretty easy to do. But the cool thing that Nintex Forms offers as well is the ability to deal with multiple line items. So if I want to buy some apples now, and how many should I buy, James?
Make it an even 10.
10, okay. And how much are they going to cost?
$1.50.
$1.50, okay. There we go. So what it's done is it's allowing us to add an infinite a number of rows, and it's also doing all the summing and totaling for us, which I think is quite cool. There you go. So let me show you how we built that. Same thing again. Go into the list, click on the Nintex Forms button, and inside here it's going to load up that form. Somebody's nicely configured it and changed a few things around, no doubt. But what they've done here, and if I can just create a little bit more screen, more space by moving these down. Don't worry, I'm not going to save this. They've used this control here on the left hand side called repeating section, and what they've done is they have dragged over repeating section, resized it. You can see that their repeating section is very, very skinny, so I'll resize mine as well. And then whatever they want to repeat, whether that's text or fields, in this case it's fields only plus a calculated value, they've dragged them into that repeating section. And I don't know whether you can see that well on the screen, but the repeating section has changed to a kind of darker solid grey. So if I move out of it, you'll see the grid lines. If I move into it, it changes to grey. And what that's saying is that I'm going to add this single line text box to the repeating section. And if I move the repeating section around, the whole text box moves with it. So anything that I want to repeat, I just put into here. And as you can see, I've got multiple repeating sections on this form as well. So that's not limited. And then with those text boxes, you can treat them like you would any other type of, well, in this case, a text box. So if they had numeric values, then you can perform your mathematical calculations on them nice and easily. Okay, so that's and then all the logic behind adding and deleting new rows is all handled automatically by Nintex Forms. And with that, you can create some really, really powerful forms. James, just want to check on time.
We're looking at 12 more minutes.
Beauty. Okay. All right, I'm going to hop out of the Nintex environment now and show you Nintex Mobile, but just before I do that, just run back into the old leave request. You'll see that I hadn't touched a few of these other icons here, and that's really what I want to focus on today with the following 12 minutes that we've got. Nintex Mobile, which covers both phones and tablets. Exactly the same thing. If I'm going to create a tablet version, I click on this button here. And what this is saying is that the users need to have the Nintex Mobile app, and when they do have that app, this form will be rendered using this layout. Now, setting out the form itself is exactly the same as the web versions. You're dragging and dropping, you're moving fields around. You can see that lots of the background and the grid lines have changed and the logos have disappeared. What we're doing with Nintex Mobile is trying to make that mobile experience exactly like it would be for any of your other apps that you have on your mobile phones. So the iOS experience, the Apple experience, is supposed to still look Apple-like. Ditto for the Windows phone experience or the Windows tablet experience. If I go back to this, you'll see that there's also an Nintex Mobile phone, which I won't bother clicking on because it looks exactly the same as the smartphone one, except with this kind of palette. But the point that I'm trying to make is that it's exactly the same to create a Nintex Mobile application as it is the web one, because the Nintex Mobile app does all the hard work in the background for you. Now, these are generic Nintex Mobile and phone and tablet layouts that we've got. If you want it to be really specific for your particular devices, you've got the list of them there. So if I wanted my iPad version to look quite different to my Windows version, then I can do that. Now, I don't really know why you would, but in some instances you might want to. So you do have the options available for you, and they've got the definitions for all of them. Okay, that's also the same thing applies for the web-based versions, which is probably more appropriate because you might want to have different JavaScript or something. So you've got particular layouts for these mobile devices. Okay, but in this case we're working with Nintex Mobile. So what I'm going to do now is minimize Node, and I'm going to show you another demo site that we've got here at Provoke. And the example that I'm going to show you today is all about hazards and maintenance. So, for example, we've identified a hazard somewhere on our work site, in our factory or something like that, and we want to alert somebody to that straight away. Now, maybe the traditional sense that you'd do it using something like an intranet is you'd run back to your desk and you'd hit new item, and then that would bring up the form, and then you fill out the hazard. So the title of it, what office you're associated with, when you identified it, whether it's a maintenance request or a hazard, any particular equipment that might be broken, the description, where it is, and your suggested corrective action. And you could upload photos if you wanted to. That's kind of cool, and that works, but you're not likely to have your photos on you. You might do, but then you have to transfer them to your computer. And the worst thing about this is that you have to run back to your desktop computer. So wouldn't it be cooler if you could just fill this out straight away? Well, actually you can. So if I bring up the same form, but it's rendered in the Nintex Mobile application. So just load that up and go over to Forms. This is what we're using here at Provoke. So we can fill in our expense claims and apply for leave and such things like that, but I'm going to show you this demo hazards and maintenance form. So somebody might have their mobile phone, or in this case a Windows tablet with them. Click on hazards and maintenance, and that exact same form is rendered using a native application for Windows Phone. And once again, I reiterate, if you had Android or iOS or something like that, then there are apps available for that too that will render it in the same way, but they'll look more Androidy or Apple-y. So why don't we fill out an example? For want of a better hazard, a spaceship is parked badly. I will pick the Wellington office, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I've also made myself the facilities manager for that. I'll say it's a hazard. There's no equipment involved. Somebody else has parked their spaceship very rudely in our car park. Some description, and then I can also geotag it. So I've said the office here, but then I can make it even more specific. With my mobile phone, it just uses the GPS. There you go, it's picked to put some coordinates. Suggested corrective action. And if I wanted to, I could take a photo and attach it, or multiple photos. I'll just upload one at the moment. And you can do that all from your mobile device. Now the key thing to note here as well is that we've also got a save button and a submit button. So key point to take away from this session is I did not have to be connected to my intranet at all. I didn't even have to be connected to a mobile phone network. I could be in completely standalone mode, offline mode, and still have this form available to me. And when I hit the the save button in this case, it will save it as a draft, or if I hit the submit button, it's going to put it in the outbox, and it's only going to send it when I get within a mobile network or the company intranet. So to expand on that, you don't have to necessarily be connected to your company intranet. You can leverage Nintex Live, just like we did for the other forms, to submit your forms using mobile. And that's quite a common scenario for lots of organizations where they won't allow their mobile phones to connect to the company Wi-Fi. They have to connect to some kind of guest one. But of course the guest one doesn't have access to the intranet. So by using Nintex Live, you can submit your forms or the form data directly via Nintex Live, and then your SharePoint server will pick them up as it needs to. So what's going on in the background with this particular workflow? This is a workflow here. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to have a look at all the Provoke offices, and it's going to calculate who the facilities manager is. And what we've done here is we've got a set of constants that say who the different facilities managers are. I picked Wellington because I'd set myself as a facilities manager for that. It's going to send an email to the person who logged the hazard or the maintenance request saying thanks very much for it. It's going to then assign it to a particular person. Now, if it's a hazard, we've got different SLAs. So in this case here, a hazard, you've got 1 day to action it. It could be, quite an urgent thing. If it's a maintenance item, then you've got a week. And what it's asking is it's going to go and talk to the facilities manager, and it's going to say, hey, we've identified a hazard or a maintenance request, and we need you to action it, but we also need you to supply some information about what you did. So this particular task here is asking for information from that facilities manager. Once they've done that, it then goes and updates the original list item with the comments that the facilities manager made, sets it to complete, and sends the notification back to the person who submitted the original request. Now if I go to my intranet itself, and I'll just cancel out of that form, hopefully we'll see the spaceship one. Here we go. Spaceship parked badly has now arrived in my intranet. Okay, and I am connected using Nintex Live with my mobile app because I find that's just a lot easier to work with. and if I had my email open, it would have an email waiting for me saying, hey, you, the facilities manager, you need to do something about this. But here's the next really cool thing about Nintex Mobile. It consolidates all the tasks that have been assigned to you. So I'll just refresh, because by default it refreshes every 15 minutes. I'm going to force a refresh. It's going to say, you are the facilities manager for this particular hazard that we've reported. Can you please do something about it? And while it's still thinking about that task, I'll just show you one that we prepared the night before. So what it'll have is all the information about the hazard down the left-hand side. Okay. It'll also have all the attachments, so all the photos that the person took. But all it's asking me to do is say exactly what I did to fix the hazard. So in this case here, it's broken glass. If it was a spaceship one, it was like, and hit submit. And then once that's done, the task will be completed and the workflow will continue. All the information will be consolidated into one place. So you can see this is effectively a one-stop shop. You can create new requests or submit new forms here, but for those of you who've got those approve actions or actions that require you to do something and submit some information, you've got that here in My Tasks. Nice and simple. It's the one-stop shop instead of going to multiple places within your intranet. And you can see here that I've got quite a few old tasks. I can squash them up and it'll show me based on week. So these ones here are ones that I submitted last week, or even earlier than that. Same thing with the forms.
Just came up on 2:30, Chris.
Oh, okay. All right. I better start wrapping it up then. So I hope that this here has been really informative about Nintex Mobile. A few key points that I would just want to repeat again, that this operates in completely offline mode if it needs to. And what you can do is you can consolidate all your tasks. It's native to all the mobile operating systems. And this also comes with Nintex Forms. It's no additional cost for this. This comes free with the Nintex Forms product. So it really enables you to take your system offline or outside the office and operate quite independently. I'll hand back to James now. Let's close this down. There you go, James. All yours.
Thanks, Chris.